and welcome to another episode of A Man's Girl USA. I have so much to tell you. First, do you remember when they made us wear masks? Well, this is the one I used to wear on planes, everywhere, because this should have happened a long time ago. And I know what you guys are thinking. Well, it's not like they're publicly funded. No, but the advertisers need to just stop advertising. The FCC needs to get involved and say, you're going to be on a 3-strike system. First, fake news, you're on strike 1, you're on notice. Second strike for fake news or spreading lies and propaganda, they should have a more serious outcome, but that's strike 2. The third one, you're out. Like you lose your license. Maybe the first time they lose their license, it's for 30 days. I don't know whatever happened to Carrie Lake. I thought she was going to be overseeing some of that, but somebody needs to be in charge of monitoring. It's called the FCC, but clearly they're not doing their job. There has to be some new regulations that prevents the spreading of misinformation. What led me to this whole rant is 2016. Who didn't already know what was happening? How did I get all this information? I knew back in 2016, I had seen emails until Google started suppressing information being put on the internet. I saw emails from John Podesta and Hillary Clinton. And this is concerning like part of the whole Steele dossier, but then they also had some on like Pizzagate, which is a whole other story. I was called a conspiracy theorist. They were like, you can't say things like that. It's not. I'm like, no, I'm telling you, I saw there was emails between her and John Podesta. He was involved. She funded the Steele dossier. I am waiting for Tulsi Gabbard to come out and say that. She hasn't said it yet. But today was the first time when I saw her on Fox that she actually mentioned Hillary Clinton. It wasn't Obama. She was the one who concocted this whole thing, her campaign, and they funded the Steele dossier, which, as we know, was the basis for the entire Russia hoax lie. And those who remembered, I was screaming that this was a big thing. And when I saw Comey and Andrew McCabe and all of those guys lying on national television about the whole thing, I was like, they're the biggest traitors to America I have ever seen in my life. It's sad to think that the truth is being made out to be a lie by the left, but the left accepted with little to no proof all of the lies that were spewed out by the Obama administration, by Hillary Clinton, by all of those evildoers wanting to destroy America for the one world government. And that's another story. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a realist. So you guys know this. If you watch my show, you know what I'm about. It's all about the truth, and it's finally coming out. And that's my rant. I have more to say, but I'm going to save that for another time because I want to introduce you to my guest. He has a 20-year career in journalism with a few years as a teacher. He's the former editor of conservative site Headline USA. He has been published on well-known sites like Zero Hedge, The Daily Caller, and The Washington Times. I love that. Ladies and gents, Ben Sellers. Hey, Ben.
Hi, everyone.
How you
doing? Good to be here.
So I left out a couple of things. First of all, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I have been looking forward to this conversation since we booked it a few weeks ago.
I'm very excited that I can't. Is there a party? What? No.
I want to know a little bit about you. Tell me a little bit about yourself, in addition to what I had mentioned.
So I actually started my career as a music and cultural writer in the mainstream media, and even in I guess you'd call it a left-wing outlet, but it was back in the days when those types of things didn't really matter. You weren't going to get canceled for your opinions and beliefs. And especially, I was kind of not in the political realm. So I was a cultural reviewer at the Seaville Weekly in Charlottesville, Virginia. And then I went on to do that and to become the music editor and the youth editor at the Freelance Star in Fredericksburg, Virginia. So that gave me a lot of opportunities to go see some great concerts back when concerts were actually good. And to do a lot of stuff, with Fredericksburg just being an hour from DC and an hour from Richmond, there were all kinds of great shows in Washington, D.C. and Richmond that I got to take advantage of, go see a lot of for free and get some good tickets. And then after the sort of the Great Recession hit and then the newsroom started downsizing, I got into teaching. And so I was an English and journalism teacher at a number of schools, including spending a year on the Louisiana Bayou in Lafourche Parish, Louisiana. And so I kind of cultivated, I had already had a love of Cajun cooking and Cajun music and New Orleans jazz and all that stuff, but I got to kind of take in all of those different flavors and sounds and sights. And then in 2018, when all of this Steele dossier stuff hit that, has been coming around, I like you, I was, immediately could tell that my BS sensor was going off.
A bullshit. A bullshit. A bullshit. A bullshit.
And I said, well, this teaching really isn't going where I want it to. I got to get back into journalism. And this time I'm going to be a truth teller. I'm going to be a political journalist. So I started off as the deputy editor at Headline USA. And then when the editor left, I became the editor-in-chief. Spent 3 years doing that until this past February. So now I'm sort of freelancing. I'd taken a different job that didn't work out. So I'm kind of seeking out new opportunities.
I hate it when that happens, especially when you have all this talent and passion and knowledge and are good at what you do. I'm hoping that you can continue on to freelance, because that's always fun to do that, but that you find something somewhere where someone says, oh my gosh, we've been waiting for you. Where have you been? So we'll make sure we get that out there, and let's let everybody know that you're open to some opportunities that will afford you the ability to, voice the truth and be a truth sharer and I would call it truth revealer to the American people, because that's what we need. And today, with all of technologies, your voice could be heard everywhere across the U.S. and across the world, where internet is not, I would say not China probably, but where they don't live in a communist regime. So you spent time in Louisiana. First of all, I love Louisiana. I love the blues. I love Cajun food so much. So much, too much. Right? I can't have it a lot, but I do love it. but the music scene too. So that's pretty exciting. And didn't you tell me before too that you went somewhere abroad? Tell me about that.
So in May, I had planned this before I left the Headline USA job, and I'd had it even written into my contract for my new job. But I fortunately didn't have to worry too much about that. So I really got to just spend 3 weeks in Europe kind of absorbing everything. And I did a trip for a good buddy of mine, a high school friend's wedding that was in Salzburg. So I flew into Vienna. And we were talking about classical music. I got to see a violin quartet that was doing some different things with Mozart. And that was a fun little evening. And it was in one of these, I guess it was a monastery where Mozart had lived. And it was right down the road from the hotel where I was staying. So that was pretty neat to be sort of walking in his footsteps. From there, I went to Salzburg, and my friend is a wealthy German whose father founded a car wash business that has done very well in Germany. And so he had his wedding at the Leopold Schloss, which is the site where the Sound of Music was filmed. So it was, suffice it to say, very fancy. Yeah. I went to Luxembourg and visited a friend there. So I got to see Luxembourg City and a little bit of the countryside. And then I started with a tour group that began in Paris. It went to Bordeaux. I got to try a little bit of the delicious Bordeaux wine.
Yes.
to the San Sebastian, which is a really cool coastal town there, very famous sort of resort town, and then to Madrid and Valencia. So it was a really big trip for me. One of those kind of
Nice.
hopefully not once in a lifetime, but one that doesn't come along, except maybe once in a decade. So
Yes. How amazing. But I've always wanted to go. So on my bucket list is Italy, and Ireland, really. Those are the two main places that I want to go. I have an obsession with the Irish people because I feel like they're like light-skinned Mexicans because I'm Hispanic, and I feel like they're the light-skinned versions of it. They're Catholic. They have big families. They like to cuss, swear, drink, and eat.
That's
and
true.
I just like a lot of
Yeah,
similarities.
it's beautiful, beautiful countryside too. Those two are definitely at the top of my list. Also, they're two of the ones that I haven't visited yet, and I'd add Portugal to that. I haven't seen Portugal, but it seems like that's a very popular spot. So, but I've got a cruise with my family booked next year for. I think it's going to be Greece to sort of down the Grecian coast. So I'm excited about that.
That's going to be fun.
I'm trying to remember. I was watching a movie that took place in some of those towns. It was called Daisy Jones and the Six, and it starred Riley Keough, who is Elvis Presley's granddaughter, and a very entertaining watch. So.
Well, that's going to be exciting. I hope to keep in touch with you so you can let me know how you and your family enjoyed the trip. Maybe you'll see Tom Hanks there. Who knows? Didn't he get a citizenship there? I wonder why.
I hope I don't see you.
I know. He'll be surrounded by all the young girls.
Talking about the Podesta files, wasn't he featured in all of that too? He was a visitor to Epstein Island. Did
you notice that he kind of went away? He kind of faded in the background. He was a part of that. He was on those emails too with Hillary with the whole thing when she was the state secretary, I guess. There's been a lot happening this week with Tulsi Gabbard coming out with, like we were just kind of discussing, that those of us knew, we kind of had that feeling that something's not right here. Like, what were your thoughts whenever this first came out into it? Because I was seeing things coming out while it was happening in 2016, but it all kind of started really coming out as the media tried to suppress it, like in 2018, like you said. What were your thoughts? Like, what made you connect these dots, and what are the things that made you kind of go, no, red flag, red flag, red flag?
Real quick, I want to plug a SoundCloud account that I think your users might enjoy, and I'll send you the link. It's Albert X. Jones, and one of his songs for bluegrass fans is a song called Deep State Pizza Party that kind of gets into a lot of that QAnon stuff and some of those Podesta emails that WikiLeaks leaked, and has a kind of some fun lyrics. So that might be enjoyable. And there's some other fun songs that kind of have a conservative bent to them. But to get back to your question, really the kind of defining moment for me, I was living in Virginia and teaching at the time, and it was when two things happened. First of all, I think the Mark Elias news came out that Hillary's, lawyer and had been the guy at Perkins Coie had coordinated with Fusion GPS to commission the Steele dossier. And I said, this is just, this stinks of a setup. And so that was kind of what drove me into becoming a conservative journalist, like I said, a truth teller, or truth, I forget the term you used, truth revealer, because, we did see that, and it was obvious to everybody except for the people whose job it is to cover it up. And, I actually wrote a piece that did really well a couple years ago on Zero Hedge. That was, I think, it was 10 conspiracy theories that will be validated in 2023 or whatever it was. And one of the things that I think is so frustrating is that really, if you go back to it, I've read that the term conspiracy theory was developed by the CIA in order to discredit people, in order to sort of minimalize and marginalize these views when people kind of strike too close to the heart of what's going on. So yeah, another piece I did that I was really exciting was I got to actually interview Tulsi Gabbard when she came here to Greensboro and to speak to her in person in an exclusive interview. So she's a really neat woman, as dynamic as she's what she appears to be on the in public. There's nothing there that she doesn't seem to be disingenuous at all. So
I get that sense when she's speaking, the way she talked. I mean, I could relate to her. I was like, oh, I so dig this chick. She's pretty cool. Regarding what you said, the CIA used conspiracy theorists. In some cases, there are situations where it's higher up by the people who pull the strings, like the Bilderberg group. They all say, or if maybe I'm giving them too much credit, maybe it goes a couple of layers down to like the Obama level with like the former people, like the Clintons, Obamas, all those people who are all part of there's like an organization, they're all part of that. But if they are the masters, this is why they win a lot, because they create catchphrases, catch terms, and they coin it and they market it and PR it across the board to the media, to all of their puppets, people who they have on the strings, including the politicians. And so when they run, they use these talking points, the same exact talking. Everything is in uniform. Well, when you repeat it, that's the first rule of marketing 101, frequency, right? It's a frequency thing, 3.2 times. And so imagine if the American people are listening to it 15 times a day, it's programming. They just start to hear it everywhere. It's like, then they start to believe it. So to your point, I mean, I think it goes beyond I think it's like a bigger thing and they use it as part of their strategy, Yeah.
Well, you mentioned marketing, but it's, the sort of the rule of propaganda that, people like Vladimir Lenin and Joseph Goebbels and Saul Alinsky and all those, if you repeat a lie often enough, it becomes the truth. It's a fundamental to this sort of pushing this leftist philosophy is this idea of just using their echo chamber to kind of distort reality. And it makes you wonder, knowing what we now know, just how much of history is actually the truth, versus how much is just, BS that we've been fed.
It kind of blows my mind a little, to be honest. I mean, because I've thought of that too, like, it does date back. You're right. It is part of a communistic tactic, to get people to listen to what they're to brainwash them. I mean, basically, that's what they're doing. What do you think so far about President Trump and what he's accomplished in his first 6 months?
Wow. I mean, it's just been phenomenal. This is, I think, gratifying to the point that it almost makes up for that lost 4 years, which I sincerely believe, was from a stolen election. I made a post not too long ago kind of warning my Twitter followers, remember what happened the last time Trump came close to exposing the Russiagate conspiracy, because back in May of 2020 was when some of these files started getting released. And I think John Ratcliffe and Chuck Grassley and some of these folks had started. And next thing you know, there was the Ahmaud Arbery and the Breonna Taylor, and of course, all leading up to George Floyd, happened in quick succession. And then, of course, COVID happened also. And so it seems like they were pretty desperate to keep a lid on that stuff, but Trump has been doing great. And I think now, because of having learned that lesson and because of being able to see what the Biden administration did, they don't have that excuse anymore of this is unprecedented, this is a threat to democracy, because they did it. Like you said, they've done everything that they accused their opponents of doing. That's another of those Alinsky strategies. And, there's no way that if somebody were to prosecute Obama, although, side note, I don't think it's going to reach that point, unfortunately. But if it were to happen, they'd have no excuses. They set the precedent. So, yeah, I mean, it's amazing, this new power that Trump has, just because of how horrible and corrupt they have been shown to be.
Yes, you're 100% accurate on that. And I wonder if, so I'm wondering, because, you hear all these things that come out and nothing ever happens. I think that's the most frustrating thing for the American people. Everybody, I've been seeing it all over social media, these things, and people are starting to give up and go, who cares? Nothing's going to happen. So that scares me because it, for a split second and in the wrong moment, it could affect them during an election time where they're like, who cares if I go and do this? If I vote, it's not going to matter anyway, because nothing's going to get done. And that could be the worst thing, because I don't know if anybody really ever knew how close we came to losing our sovereignty.
Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, and I want to do a quick update about a document that got passed by the United Nations this weekend called the Pact of the Future document. It's two parts, one on science and technology and one about the youth and future generations. It is quite egregious, and it was done by a procedure called the silence procedure, which makes it a pact. And if no one objected, it is automatically adopted and put into the record as being completely adopted. This is the World Health Organization's runaround, or end around. Since they were not able to get the World Health Organization treaty passed, they decided to take it to the General Assembly. And it is even more egregious than what the World Health Organization was wanting to get passed. Let me just read you something really quickly about what is inside of this pact that is now being accepted by 193 nations around the world and equally open-armed accepted by our current administration. It says that this is the power structure, fully digital and maximized for the control of the masses. Everyone will be expected to have a biometric digital ID that marks them not just as citizens of an individual country, but as a global citizen. So anytime you hear global citizen or anytime you hear sustainability, think that this is an egregious thing that's happening at the level of the World Health Organization and the United Nations. Anyone that has a dissonant opinion will be labeled as misinformation, disinformation, or malinformation and memory hold. Perpetrators for unapproved information will be fact-checked and punished by the system, which will be operated and enforced by artificial intelligence. Punishments will include being locked out of one's bank account, being unable to make certain purchases, unable to get on an airplane, on a subway, drive on public roads. This is the future, according to the world's self-appointed overlords at the United Nations. These are unelected bureaucrats that are making decisions about our country, our sovereignty around the world. Nothing could be more important at this point in time than to get prepared, have water, food, digital access, flashlights, a way to communicate with family and friends. Now is really the time to get involved and get prepared, because this is what's coming. Our Congress is sitting on its hands. There was a press conference on the 17th about this, and no further action has been taken. So it's up to us to mobilize and to go forward, particularly with your local sheriffs, to get your constitutional sheriffs to say, this isn't going to be allowed in my county. Thank you very much. Take action. We've been talking about the onset of one world order, one world government, one world religion, one world money for a long time. Well, it's no longer coming. It's here.
I have a video where they're talking. Congress came out before the press in front of the White House before the election. I want to say it was like October. And they were talking about how the WHO, a couple of organizations that were talking about President Biden signing off on giving up basically our sovereignty. It was all, I'm sure, relative to the whole COVID thing, because they're using that as a guise, right? As an excuse to like bring the one world government. There's a reason they almost killed Trump. It goes beyond what people think. It's not just that they didn't want him to be president. It's the why. People are like, dig deeper. If you dig deeper, you'll find that they want a one world government. You know, we are like the last free world, like the last free nation in the free world. So that would have been a big deal. It would have been a big to do. It was scary and nobody knew. And I'm like sitting here going, I felt like I was hearing like war alarms going off, like the end of the world going. And I'm like, why isn't anybody else doing anything? And I just, all I could do, Ben, is pray. I had to like stop because I was really like going, oh my gosh, what's happening? And I had to pray. And it just so happened that the election happened before any of that could happen, especially now with the auto pin and all that we know that he did with that. He could have easily signed off on that, or somebody could have done it for him. That's why Charles Schwab then stepped down, because all of this work that they've been doing the last, since 2016, leading up to when he got elected, when the election was stolen, I'm saying it, I don't care, when Biden was placed into office, then that was going to be their finish line. It's funny to me that people like, what's his name, Bernie Sanders, is always talking about the oligarchs. I'm like, they're your friends, the Democrats that are at the helm of the Bilderberg Group and everything that are wanting this one world government. It's like they want control and all the little people below, and they just get to do whatever and run whatever and have all this money. And the rest of us would be just like in those sci-fi movies that you see, eating out of trash cans. And that's what I saw happening in the future. And tell me if I'm nuts. It's okay if you wouldn't be the first person, but tell me how much sense this makes to you, what I'm saying.
Absolutely. Headline USA, we did a lot of writing about the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab and some of this. What's really scary is one thing that Trump has yet to do, and it's a job that's going to be more beyond him, is the real estate market. You have these companies like BlackRock, and side note, I actually suggested that BlackRock was behind the Trump Butler incident, because I think that they were very panicked about his pulling out of the Ukraine war. They want to control the food supply, but it's, all of our basic needs, food, housing, a shelter. And, you hear them talk even every now and then about trying to take over the water supply. I think there was it went viral not too long ago when they had one of those WEF forums where they were exploring that idea. Well, because COVID didn't work, what can we do next, to get people into compliance? And they said, well, if we control their water, then that's going to have to bring them to their knees.
You know what the test for that was, don't you?
Remind me. The test
I think
for
Hawaii. I think the fires in Hawaii.
Oh yeah, that's Lahaina.
Look at everything that they want control of. They did test runs. That's what COVID was. And that's why you named it. It was the World Economic Forum and the WHO who were wanting, and the WHO was involved with this conversation for us to lose our sovereignty, all in the name of health and keeping everybody under one, that's what they use as an excuse. But I really think that when these big companies like this that own everything just about, and they're owners, they're all part of the rich oligarchs that are not Republicans, they're Democrats. Most of them are liberals. They do test runs. I really think this.
Absolutely. I agree with all of that. And in fact, I think Biden, if memory serves, did sign that quote unquote treaty with the World Health Organization that would give them the authority to do whatever they wanted in the event of a pandemic, to implement the rules, because, U.S. politicians are too afraid to implement any kind of rules. And especially after that, I think probably 80% of people would be like, hell no, I'm not doing that again. So, using that sort of outside organization to do that. Fortunately, only Congress has the authority to ratify a treaty. So it's unenforceable unless another radical leftist gets back to office, in which case they'll, declare a emergency and do whatever they need to in order to compel compliance. So,
yeah, and that's why I think they're trying so hard. Like you have two Republicans that have just left office. Now they're coming after the areas where the GOP where the Republicans have majority. And so they don't want that. Obviously, they're trying to stop that.
If you're referring to what I think you are, Tom Tillis leaving is a good thing for America.
No, he was a good thing. Yes. There was somebody else that left shortly after him, though. He just got into office, too, like not too long ago. And I can't remember who it was. All I see is Republican leaving office out of nowhere. And I'm like, okay, who got to you? Who got to you?
Right.
Either they threatened your life, they have incriminating photos, they have some kind of incriminating evidence, or they're paying you. It's going to be one of those things.
There's only been a few of those examples, and folks who I think kind of forced the House majority to dwindle a little bit, where they've only got like 3 now. So, hopefully things will go right next year. And I think with the current trajectory that, Trump could be one of those rare exceptions where the incumbent gains seats unless they pull another pandemic or pull whatever they have that they're plotting. It's almost like they're being too quiet. It's like the left right now seems a little bit too incompetent based off of what we know. I don't think Hunter Biden and Jasmine Crockett are not their best options. They've still got their well-heeled financiers who are pulling the strings. So
I think you're right. I think somebody told Jasmine Crockett to be quiet. They said, shut up and sit down for just a minute. Okay. They're kind of distancing themselves from that right now, but you're right. They're being quiet, but that's because they're in the work for something. Here's what I think. The Republicans fail. Usually we all came together for the election. I mean, we fought hard. I'm going to say it again. Elon Musk, I love you. I love you, Elon. I do, because you gave us this platform to which we can tell the truth. And people started seeing it. People started seeing things. I saw things changing. Things were moving. If it wasn't for that, I don't know that I'm going to say, I don't know that we would have won the election because the truth wasn't out there. Meta, Zuckerberg, he did everything. They all suppressed. Even though he admitted to it, he was still doing it. I was still being suppressed. I was being kicked off. All of the platforms. In LinkedIn, they're usually, Susie, come lately. They're always late to the party. They started doing that to me. They're starting to suppress me now on LinkedIn. I used to get 100,000 views and now I get like 5,000. And it's not because I'm not pushing content out there. I promise you, it's not because of that. So, that was a big game changer. So here's what I think the Republicans do wrong. We are too nice. We are too polite. Why are you being polite? These people are evil and they are not polite and they don't care about your feelings and they don't care. You've got to come back with them with a big bite. We are too polite and too nice and they're running over us. We're not aggressive. The liberals are idiots. They're being ran by an idiot party of people. So they take the first blow. They take the first takedown. They are always the first to knock us down because we are not being proactive in our messaging. We're not being proactive in our strategies. And I feel like some of these Republican parties in some red states need some fresh blood who can come in and say, let's strategize for the win. Let's strategize and knock him out in the first punch. Enough, Mr. Nice Guy. So that's kind of where I'm at. I think it would be refreshing to hear more people speak up that way. And let's focus. We have a job to do, and that is to save America and keep it safe. I've said it from day one. The moment President Trump won that election, the fight began, the real fight. And here we are fighting the big people. And then if people pay attention to what's going on in their states and their cities, they will see that the fight is still going on and they're attacking it from small markets. But people aren't paying attention. And when I say wake up, I'm not talking about, I know there's QAnon, and maybe I had something to say. I never really was with QAnon. I thought they were a little bit too far.
I suspect QAnon was a CIA operation, too, to kind of discredit the MAGA movement, because a lot of that, but what they do is they'll tell half truths. We have on record the stuff that John Podesta and Hillary Clinton were writing about pizza parties and hot dogs and all this in this coded language. Walnut sauce was my favorite of those terms that people can look up on their own if they don't know. But that's on. They can't deny that. So all they can do is to try to sort of distort the muddy the waters and make people associate that with these sort of ideas that JFK Jr. is coming back to life or something like that. Something crazy. So
they have to connect it to make it seem crazy. But and talking about pizza parties affected kids. Kids lost at the border. No, you don't lose over 300,000. I think there was at one time close to 500,000 kids lost. When you're dealing with the cartels who traffic these kids, you're in cells with them. And so to me, these were commissions that were being made. I feel like they were in on it. You don't lose those kids. like what happened to these children? And I think that I wish President Trump would make it a number one priority to make sure. I know they've located some. You don't hear it on the news, but I heard Caroline Levitt bringing it up the other day. I want to hear more about that because there are still some kids alive. They're not all dead. We need to save them from the evil and from what stole their innocence and the torture that they're going through. These little kids. I mean, we're talking little kids. I won't cry. I'll try not to cry. Watching The Sound of Freedom kind of finished connecting the dots of what I thought. But it was always been my mindset when people say, yeah, those kids lost at the war. I'm like, they weren't lost. They were trafficked. They were trafficked, and the Biden administration is responsible for that. And I'm going to say Mayorkas, that little effing weasel, he's at the head of this, I think. When you're looking at straight into the camera in front of, Congress or the Senate, whatever, and telling people, yeah, no, we don't have issues at the border. What are you talking about? I'm like, just because you say it doesn't mean we're going to believe it. Most of us know the truth. You're the only one believing your BS. No one's believing that. But that's my point about these kids. And it's why is it always the Democratic Party who's primarily involved with the destruction of their innocence and the harm that comes, the evil to these kids,
I think it's in their marrow, to be a leftist. In fact, I got in a LinkedIn discussion that was related to this, and I envy you that you used to get 100,000, because I think I've got like 14,000 connections on there, but I'm lucky if my comments get a couple thousand. But I got into a discussion, and someone was saying, do you have to say all these mean things? And I said, I'm not making accusations about the leftists. This is really sort of quintessential to what it means to be a leftist, is that they do these things. And, so one of them is the sexual deviancy, that, they've built their constituency around people who don't want to follow norms, and then trying to use, these coalitions of lunatics and people who are outside of, normal American culture. So, the same thing we see in the transgender movement and all this sort of business of people who, hate America and hate the majority culture. And so they try to undermine and subvert it in any way they can. So I think that a lot of this stuff, and this ties in with, if you look at those lists of the visitors to Epstein's Islands, I'm sure there are a few conservatives that are kind of mixed up with all that stuff, that you heard, some of the people like, I'm drawing a blank on his name. But, some of this talk about, these cocaine orgies in Congress, but it seems like an awful lot of those are the Democrats, and either it's because they lack any sort of moral core, any moral fiber, or they're being blackmailed, one or the other.
You're right. They got led there. They got led to slaughter when then the photos come out, but there were more Hollywood libs and in the entertainment industry that were there than anybody. And it's kind of sad. I even saw Gwen Stefani on that list, and I'm like, why would she go? Listen, I'm gonna say, the Democrats, posting everywhere, the idiot libtards that, they're just, some of these people posting stuff like with Donald Trump. And I'm like, you're an idiot. Do you understand that they were business back in the 80s and 90s? They just, into New York, big people who had name and business, they associated. You really don't see any of him older. You could tell when he just cut the ties with him and quit and disassociated himself. But I've always said anybody can have a photo with someone that, hey, let's take a photo, before the truth started coming out in the rumors. And then he understood, hey, this guy's not a good guy. But it's who flew to the island, because from what I understand, the island is where these girls were abused. That's where you got flown. To me, if you're on the list, if you're on that flight log list to Lolita Island on the Lolita Express, you're guilty. So.
It's a complex issue, and I'm one of those in the camp, and of course it's a lot of conservatives divided who kind of thinks that Epstein might have been a foreign agent, and that all this. He goes from being a math teacher in Brooklyn, who was hired by Bill Barr's father to teach at some school up there, to suddenly he's a billionaire hedge fund manager and is associating with Ghislaine Maxwell, whose father, of course, was had known Mossad ties. So there's just a few too many dots. And it makes an awful lot of sense. And unfortunately, when you put it in the context of, well, Elon kind of hinted at that, in July, and then all of a sudden Trump's bombing Iran and is kind of doing the bidding of Israel. What's going on here? Let's hope that he's not being extorted or blackmailed in some way, but it's not going to, for a lot of people, I think, diminish his accomplishments. And one of the things that I wrote about at one point in Headline USA was, I said that Trump's pussy grabber moment was probably one of his most brilliant defining moments, because it showed that he could withstand those Democrat attacks, because for Hillary to have made that accusation, in coordination with the Bush family and Billy Bush, and then to have expected him to be utterly destroyed by that. And Trump didn't do what the normal Republican would have done, which was to sort of crumble under the pressure. He, kind of pushed back against it. And so then the story became, well, isn't it a little bit disingenuous for Hillary to be, faulting Trump for this when she, didn't seem to mind too much when it was her own husband doing it. And so, I think there's a lot of willingness to forgive what is perceived as some of Trump's moral shortcomings because of that willingness to fight and to, do the right thing in the long run. And, I certainly, whatever his association with Epstein might have been, I think that the public would forgive that a lot more. But what would be a harder pill to swallow is if he's sort of beholden to another foreign power, just being blackmailed. I'd rather the truth just came out. So
absolutely, I don't give a crap about guy locker room talk. I don't care about them. Boys will be boys. Let's move on. We've all made mistakes in our life. I'm not here to judge. What I am here for is to protect our nation, because we want to make sure we pass on a good country, a safe country, the American values for our kids, for our grandkids, so they can live a life of yesteryear. I miss the yesteryear. I just want my grandkids to experience that too. That's a little bit more safety, a little bit more preservation of their innocence. They don't need to be exposed to things until it's time later in life,
I was an 80s kid, and so I grew up, but we had a neighborhood down in Georgia where, we just had the run of the place. We would rollerblade around, and, nobody ever worried about all this, stuff happening, because it was a community that kind of looked after itself. So,
yeah. So you understand. Listen, I know we've taken up a lot of your time here. I have enjoyed this conversation so much. Tucker Carlson, you need to call this guy. You need to call Ben.
I had a conversation with Tucker once, and again, we talked about Tulsi, and he's another one who's the real deal. So, yeah, I definitely put in an application there, but I think he's, probably there's probably a lot of people who would love to work for him. So, but
yeah, but hopefully he has a good eye for authenticity, and he would be someone that he would, be entertain the opportunity maybe. But I hope that you don't stop writing, because you can write articles, especially since you've been published and you were with a reputable company. I don't think that you would have any trouble having, as a freelancer, having your work published, because I think that you're amazing. So don't stop writing, keep writing, write your thoughts and send it into everything and see what happens. Someone's going to publish it, don't give up, just keep going. Because I think that's how it'd be great if they started to come after you and saying, hey, we need you to do a story on this. That's what my wishes for you. And that's what I will pray for you.
Well, thank you so much. And I've really enjoyed this, and hope to be back on sometime. We didn't even get to talk about our Cajun stuff and our music.
I know.
But that's okay. We had a good chat.
Yeah. Next time we'll start with that. There's a lot we didn't get to cover. So.
Yeah, after Labor Day is when the whiskey comes out. It's the brown liquor after Labor Day. So,
I
maybe I'll
know.
start working on some cocktails.
Yeah, there you go. That would be great. You can pass me the recipe. We could have them while we do our little
Sounds good.
conversation.
Sounds
Sounds
good.
great, Ben. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Okay.